My guest today is an epic hockey personality. He co-hosts hockey's most famous show, Hockey Night in Canada, and he's also the lead studio host for Rogers Monday Night Hockey. It's my absolute honor to welcome to Jake's Takes the one and only David Amber. What's up, David? How you doing?
Jake, it's my honor to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day and the season's wrapping up. I'm just getting ready for the draft next week in Nashville, but it's been a fun year. So I'm excited to talk hockey with you.
Yeah, it's definitely been a fun year. Definitely excited for the draft, but come on, it's not your honor. It's my honor, David. Thank you so much. It means so much to me.
My pleasure.
And as a fan, I love Sportsnet, but not just that. I also love Sportsnet because of the personalities and the connections I've gotten to them and how amazing the people are there. Guys like Tim McAuliffe and Nick Kypreos were on my show. And trust me, when I say Kipper is the best, I mean Kipper is the best. How special of a person he is. Like, how close are you with Kipper?
Oh, I've known Kipper for a long time and worked alongside him for many years. And he is quite a character. First of all, he's super hilarious. You have to keep your eyes sort of on both sides of your head because he's always pulling pranks. In our makeup room, we had this sink where you'd wash your hands after the show and you'd kind of wipe your makeup off. We have to wear makeup because you don't want to see us without makeup. And he rigged it so instead of the water going down into the sink, it would come flying up. So he followed me with a camera, and he knows my post-show routine: turn on the taps, wash my face, get the makeup off. And I turn on the tap and it blasts me like all over, soaked my suit. And he was there with his dumb camera, his phone camera, laughing. And he has this big, very gregarious laugh. You probably heard him laugh when he was on your podcast. It's like that one, super.
That's accurate. That's accurate, David. That's so good.
Yeah. And so he is a hilarious guy and a fun teammate. And just, you got to be very careful because he loves the pranks.
Yes, he's definitely a prankster, but he messages me all the time. He's so nice. He's really, really so nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anyway, did you play hockey growing up? Because I know you're pretty big, so.
I did, but not at Nick Kypreos' level. I just played a regular, it used to be called the MTHL. Now it's called the GTHL. I just played in the GTHL or the MTHL at the time, and I loved it. I was a huge Leafs fan growing up. I used to watch Hockey Night in Canada. And day up when I was a little guy, my parents would kick me back into bed by the end of the second period. And then obviously when I got a bit older, I got to watch the whole games and used to watch, the old greats, Darryl Sittler, Lanny McDonald, and all those great Montreal Canadian teams as well. And probably when I was a little bit older than you are now, I decided I wanted to get into sports broadcasting. So I knew I wasn't good enough to play in the NHL, but I certainly am glad that I've had a chance to report on the NHL and still follow the game closely.
Were you a fighter? Because I could see you and BX dropping the gloves, going at it. Who would win that, by the way? I want to watch that. I paid good money to see that.
BX would probably beat me up badly. For one, he's been in 100 hockey fights. I'm a nice guy. People will tell you that. Secondly, he's a professional athlete and about 10 years younger than me. So I think you check off every box. I'd be at a massive, massive disadvantage. All I would try and do is maybe wrap him up so I didn't get beat up too badly. I might be able to do that, but thankfully we haven't been in any fights yet. But it's funny, people ask us that once in a while. A fight I'd probably have trouble in. An arm wrestle I might have a shot in, but certainly a fight wouldn't go my way.
Do you follow any other sports besides for hockey?
I do. I used to actually be the Raptors host on a show, Gate 5 Live, on NBA TV Canada. And when I worked down in the States, I covered a lot of football. I've covered a lot of baseball, been to a bunch of World Series as a reporter. And I've been really lucky to host the Olympics and to cover some golf and some tennis as well. So I've had a great variety of sports I've had a chance to cover. Certainly over the last decade or so, it's been pretty much exclusively hockey, which has been great. Goes back to my first love. But the variety of covering the different sports has been really, really fun for me. And I've had a chance to go to some amazing cities and some amazing events over the years.
Speaking of the Raptors, I've also had some really, really good connections there. So many awesome people: Coach Nurse, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr. And trust me, I am so excited for tomorrow night, the draft. Apparently huge moves coming. Maybe looking at number 3 or 2 or whatever it is. I'm super excited. I want to see how it's going to play out.
First of all, Jake, you're pretty well connected. I can see you, you're going to be I don't know if you're going to be the next Ron McLean or Tim McAuliffe, but you might be the next Elliot Friedman because you seem to have everyone on speed dial. Everyone's reaching out to you. You have all the connections, man. I'm excited to see what your future holds. But yes, I'm excited too for the NBA draft, and I don't know if the Raptors are going to make a big move. Like you, I follow all the insiders, and it sounds like maybe they'll move up, try to get Scoot Henderson or whatever the case may be. I don't know.
That would be amazing.
Was that the move you want? But
that's the move I want. I think Scoot would be perfect for the organization.
Yeah.
He's so shifty, amazing ball handling skills, and I think he can really develop into that superstar point guard that we've been looking for a while.
Look at you. You got it all figured out. And you know what? Freddie's opted out, so he might be gone. And it might take trading a guy like Pascal Siakam, I guess, is what they're saying, to move all the way up to the 3 spot. But, I trust Masai Ujiri. He's made a lot of shrewd and bold moves along the way. They've mostly all paid off. So I'm interested to see how it all shakes down, too. I'll be watching for sure.
Yeah, I think everyone, like, Fred's an amazing player. He's an amazing leader. Perfect, but I think he's a 2 guard. If you look at his effective field goal percentage, it's actually the worst in the entire league. And he's not a point guard in my opinion. He's an off the ball spot up shooter like he was with Kawhi when he flourished in that run when they went into Milwaukee and he just lit it up. And I think he needs to go to a team for his sake that he can do the same thing like that.
All right, forget about you being the next Elliot Friedman. I think you might be the next Masai Ujiri. It sounds like you're ready to be a GM or something. You could be right. I mean, Fred can create his own shot, which is amazing. And when he's on, he's really on, and he's such a tenacious defender. The only issue with him being a 2 guard maybe is with his size. Right. How will he defend guys who are 6'6", 6'7", which we're seeing those sort of swing guys now at the 2-3 spot are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", and that might be a bit of a liability on the defensive side. But I do see what you're saying on the offensive side for Freddie, and it's interesting to see what his summer is going to hold, and if he'll be back with the Raptors or if he's taking his act somewhere else.
Everyone's looking at the 3 now, but like, not just that, they also have 13, and you can get some pretty darn good guys like Keontae George, Canadian Leonard Miller. I'm really curious to see what they do.
It's going to be, the draft's an interesting time. I think teams have to declare what they want to do. And, I think with the Raptors, it was a disappointing season by all accounts. Everyone expected them to be a top tier team. And let's face facts, they barely made it into the play-in, and they got knocked out right away in the play-in, despite having a 19-point lead in the second half or whatever it was. So I think the question right now for the management and the Raptors is, are you guys going to be rebuilding and literally kind of bringing it to its knees and just building around Scotty, or are you going to try and hold on to OG, Pascal, Scotty, and build around that nucleus and say, okay, we can jump back to a top tier spot in the East? I think we'll find that answer out in the next 48 hours, right? Because if they do go and trade a Pascal or an OG, then maybe the sign is, okay, we're thinking about rebuilding a little bit. If they keep those guys and try and add, then maybe they're trying to keep the magic alive from a few years ago.
I can definitely see those Scoot and Scotty, See what I'm saying? Like the future of Toronto, Scoot and Scotty.
The alliteration's very good for us broadcasters, right?
Oh yeah. Anyway, so now let's get back on topic with the NHL playoffs that just finished. And Vegas, man, 6 years into the league, getting a cup. Leafs haven't done that in how long? Since 67? That's ridiculous. They've been to the cup twice. I can't. It just frustrates me so much. But what was the environment like in a playoff game? How crazy are those fans?
Well, it's funny. I was in Vegas and you talk to some of the fans. They're like, oh, man, we've had to wait 6 long years to get back to the final. And I'm like, yeah, you long-suffering Vegas fans, right? There's 12 or 13 teams that have never even won a Stanley Cup. How do you think fans in Buffalo or Vancouver feel when they joined the league back in 1970, which is before I was even born, and they haven't won a Stanley Cup, and here's Vegas, 2 finals in the first 6 years and a Stanley Cup championship. Yeah, it's very difficult, if you're a Leaf fan or some of these other franchises, to watch a new team in the NHL have this incredible, great success early on. But credit to George McPhee, credit to Kelly McCrimmon. You know what? And I'm sure you notice this because you're an astute follower, obviously, of the game. They only had 1 drafted player on that Vegas team. 1 player that they drafted on the team, and that was Nick Hague. Every other guy, free agency, trades, picking them up off the waiver wire, etc. So they built a team in a very unique way, very different than the model that most teams take to draft players, develop them, and then bring them up through their system. They said, yeah, we had this incredible group of young, talented players when we were able to sort of pick the misfits off all these other teams. And then we were able to draft a little bit, but trade that draft equity to get players. And you end up with the Petrangelos and the Eichels, et cetera. It worked out really well for them. So it was a really good job by both George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon to basically build a championship caliber team.
Before the playoffs, we have me and my friends, like we do brackets and everything. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
even joking, I was dead serious. I chose it to be Panthers Kraken. I was going for them the whole time. I was like, because I felt like both teams are like so underappreciated, grit, size. The only thing was I wasn't 100% sure. I didn't think Florida would actually beat Boston. But I told my friends if Florida beats Boston, they're going all the way. And it's so awesome. It's what a surprise. But I wish the Kraken would have pulled through. That'd have been so awesome.
Well, I mean, they knocked off the defending champs. That's bold, man. So I said you might be the next Elliot Friedman. I scratched that off. I said you might be the next Masai Ujiri. I scratched that off. You might be the next like Cabby. You have all the lines. You have all the betting angles here. You have the Florida Panthers getting all the way to the final. No one, and I mean no one, had that, right? They were barely made the playoffs. They're the eighth seed, first eighth seed since Nashville like 6-7 years ago to make the final. And I know they didn't win the final, but the fact that you even picked them to win the East is unbelievable. And the fact you picked the Kraken to beat Colorado, I don't know anyone who picked Seattle over Colorado. So you're pretty good at this, and you're starting to actually bother me a little bit. You're a little too good for your own. You're too young to
I,
be this good.
I might have been a little biased with Seattle beating Colorado because I have a friend who's an Avalanche fan. It's like
Wow.
I was really really pulling for them, but I saw the Kraken. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. No, they honestly, they're another team. And again, I think it's funny. I was having this like hypothetical conversation. Would you be better off? Let's say you're a fan of, I don't know, Philadelphia. Are you better off Philadelphia building what they have now? Are you better off if Philadelphia tomorrow could become an expansion team? Like Seattle expansion team 2 years later into the second round.
I think
You know,
expansion. I'm taking an expansion team.
the way it's set up, because you don't have the salary cap stranglehold that some of the other teams have, because you start out with these fresh contracts. So you're absolutely right. I'm wondering if that's an easier path right now to win a championship as an expansion team than it is as a team with an existing group of players that have inflated salaries for many of the players.
As much as I love Florida, though, they're so annoying. They had great they had great goaltending. Matthew Tkachuk was off the charts, but it's their style of play. It seems to fit in so well in playoff hockey, but at times it wasn't even hockey. Like the Gudis stick hole to win the series against the Leafs. Just all these things. Like, do you like it that at playoff time teams get away with so much?
Well, listen, I don't want to parade to the penalty box. I don't think anyone pays to watch 20 power plays in a game. I like to see 5-on-5 hockey. I like to see it with an edge. I like to see it with aggression. I like to see it with passion. 100% if there's obvious rules being broken and it's either creating scoring chances as the Gudis stick hole did, or it's denying scoring chances as we saw, or players are deliberately out there trying to injure other players. 100% I want those things called. But to be honest with you, I don't mind what makes up a penalty to change just a little bit. I don't mind them allowing the players to play and allowing for the odd, skirmish, scuffle, etc. I just think the level of intensity is so far greater in the playoffs than it is the regular season. Look at the injuries that you saw in your Florida Panthers, guys playing with a broken sternum, guys playing with dislocated shoulders. They want it so badly. I don't want to see the refs become the storyline. So it does make it very difficult, but as long as it's called evenly for both teams, and if they raise the barometer a little bit, Jake, to make it a little bit tougher to call some penalties, I don't mind that.
By the way, I wanted to ask you about another Kachuk because I know the Leafs now they just got Brad Treliving and they took a huge step this year. But there's people talking about breaking up the core four, making a trade like a Nylander for a guy like Tom Wilson, maybe a Pierre-Luc Dubois. But my call is if you want someone that's gritty and a really good, you got to go talk about Brady Kachuk. And I know Ottawa's not necessarily looking to move him, but if I were the Leafs, I'd give up a lot to get Brady Kachuk.
That might be an impossible situation. He's their captain. He's the nucleus of their team. He drags that team into fights. And I think I agree with you 100%, Jake. You win championships with guys like Brady Tkachuk, and there's not a lot of them in the league. You mentioned Tom Wilson, and of course, he's gone through a series of injuries. You know, Evander Kane at his best is that preeminent power forward. But how many top end power forwards who can play with that much edge, that physically can beat you with their fists or can beat you with the stick and can find a way to drag their team into fights? There's not that many of those guys. And Brady Tkachuk might be the best of the bunch. I mean, he might be sort of, as Brian Burke used to say, that unicorn. You just don't find these guys very often because there's so few of them. I love his game. I'm sure Pierre Dorian receives all sorts of calls wondering about Brady Tkachuk, but I'm sure he hangs up on most of those calls. He's signed to a long-term deal. He loves it in Ottawa, and he's the glue guy on that team.
What about Marner? What do you think they would accept if we offered him Marner? Because I would do, as much as I love Marner, as good of a player he is, I think we're missing a player like Tkachuk, and we need that.
Listen, I don't know. I think that's a great talk rate. Next time you have a guest on, one of these radio hosts, they could probably answer that for you better than I can. Mitch Marner is an elite player. He makes $10.9 million. He's the third highest paid winger in the National Hockey League. Brady Tkachuk is a center and a physical force and their captain. So there's both. You can make arguments both ways. I think depending on the team, you put Mitch Marner in the right environment, I think he could be a Stanley Cup winner. You put Brady Tkachuk with the right guys around him, he could be a Stanley Cup winner. So there's no wrong answer. It really just is a matter of what does a team need at a certain point.
You're gonna hate me even more. You ready for this?
Oh no, Jake, you're killing me.
I'm going to Marner's tournament, and I'm gonna interview him and everything. I can't wait. July 14th. It's gonna be awesome.
That is awesome. Well, you should ask him if he should be traded for Brady Tkachuk. I want to hear what he has to say.
By the way, another big talk now is Milan Lucic and how the Leafs are interested in him. He's older now, and given Tree Living's history with Calgary, you think there's still gas in the tank for Lucic? Do you think he's still a productive piece to maybe a winning team?
Potentially, yeah. Milan Lucic, when he is at his best, even at this advanced age, you know, he's the kind of player for 20, 30 games, you might not notice him. You know, he's not going to light up the scoring, et cetera, et cetera. But he's always a presence. And when he is that big presence, he can make a difference. I don't know. They do have a history there. A guy like him, he's a physical, you know, he's a power forward, certainly past his prime of being that 20, 30 goal guy, but he's a very well-liked guy. They love, you know, guys love playing with him. We've seen in the past, the Leafs have brought in the likes of Joe Thornton, Wayne Simmons, Jason Spezza. I can go on and on and on. You know, they have a history of bringing in sort of seasoned vets to mesh with the younger guys. And Milan Lucic is a great guy like that. So we'll see what happens.
Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about the Pittsburgh Penguins. They've won 3 cups in the Sidney Crosby era, and Pittsburgh's have been very competitive for a number of years now, except for last year, which they missed the playoffs and everything. And their core of Crosby, Letang, and Malkin are getting older now. So what does Kyle Dubas need to do in order to bounce Pittsburgh back and be contenders again? Do you think he should do that, or do you think he should pull a blow up and maybe try and rebuild?
Well, I don't think they're going to blow it up because they just signed Letang, of course, last year to that 6-year deal. They signed Malkin to his deal, and you're not doing anything with Sidney Crosby. So I think they're going to try their best to build around them. But like you said, Jake, I'm not convinced that's going to be a winning proposition, right? Like, they seemed old, they seemed slow, and we all know how the end of the season played out when they lost. When I say they, I don't mean those 3 players. I mean the surrounding cast around those 3 players. We know how that final week played out with Chicago and Columbus losing to those 2 teams and ultimately missing the playoffs. I think there's a lot of question marks there. One thing that Kyle Dubas is adopting is he's taking over a team with a lot of free agents, a lot of ability to change the look and feel of the lineup. And I wonder, it's probably incumbent on him to surround those guys, that nucleus, with good, young, up-and-coming players. They've not had a lot of first-round draft picks over the last 10 years. They kept trading their draft picks to get guys who are ready to jump in to be part of those Stanley Cup winning teams. But maybe that mindset's changing a little bit. But one last thing I'll say is you never sleep on Sidney Crosby. You never go,
100%.
well, he's over the hill.
100%. I agree.
Never, yeah. When you have Crosby, you have a preeminent, you know, I consider him a top 5 player of all time. And that being the case, you know, I'm sure there's been a lot of dialogue between Dubas and Sid, and sort of saying, here's my vision. Does it meet your vision? And I'm sure they're going to kind of go through this together, because Sidney Crosby's not here to rebuild over the last, 3, 4, 5 years of his career. He's there to win championships. So I think Kyle Dubas is going to do everything in his power to try and build around those guys, fill in the parts as necessary, and see what they can do.
When I had Connor McDavid on my show, I asked him what Sidney Crosby's biggest weakness is. He told me it's video games. I don't know if they want to keep him around much longer, but.
So you're doing a lot of name dropping here. Marner, you had McDavid on your show?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. We can't get these guys on our shows. Connor McDavid, whenever I walk up to him, ask him for anything, he kind of rolls his eye. He don't want to talk to me. Clearly, next time I see Connor McDavid, if I get close enough, I'm going to say, so you go on Jake's show, you don't come on our show. What's going on there? You got
to tell him, bring me in, I'll help you out.
I might have to put you in touch with my bosses. Just don't take my job, okay? I got a family to feed here, but I definitely would love to have you in the studios. Did when you talked to Kipper, did he say he's going to get you on his radio show?
Yeah, he did.
Good, because you've got there's a certain charm you've got there, Jake, which is undeniable. So, and you know your stuff, obviously. So, you know what, McDavid, I don't see any weakness on the ice, so maybe it is his video games that is the weakness. I'm not sure, or Sid. He said that about Sid, you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's funny. That is
anyway.
Well, of course, Sid's weakness is his video games, because he's not worried about video games. He's worried about scoring goals and winning championships.
100%. Anyway, David, thank you so much for doing this and taking your time to come on my show today. Did you have fun?
Jake, I had a great time. It was one of the best interviews I've been part of, and I want to thank you again for having me on. And have an awesome summer. Congrats on graduation. I'm excited for you in the next chapter in your life. And I hope we cross paths. Don't be a stranger. Reach out anytime.
100%.